huge arms, Popeye arms. Matty Holliday. Matty, he's a big guy. He's a big guy with big arms. Matty Holliday, how you doing, buddy?
What's up, boys?
What's going on?
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for coming on.
Cat sounds.
My pleasure.
Yeah, Cat's voice is really struggling, but he's a trooper. He came into work.
Oh, wow. He's always been the toughest sideline reporter in the business.
Darn right.
Just hold on. Listen Kat,
to him.
Please ask the first question.
What's the matter? What's the matter, Kat?
Just listen to this voice. Go ahead, Kat.
First of all,
Oh, my God. That is bad. Why don't you let the guys ask the questions?
Well, because I know that it was your birthday, because your birthday is on the same day as my wife's birthday. Happy birthday.
Yes, it is. You usually forget about me.
And Matt. So what did you do to celebrate? I'm not trying to brag, but as you know, I've done pretty well as a sideline reporter. So I took the family to Melting Pot for my wife's birthday. What did you do for your birthday?
We had a camp actually going on here in Stillwater for our baseball at Oklahoma State. So I spent a couple hours over there watching some players and hitting some ground balls. And then the night, Zach Esposito, who's our assistant wrestling coach, and his wife are some of our closest friends, and his wife also has the same birthday. And so he made dinner. He made really good tenderloin and lamb chops on the grill, and we just hung out, played cards, and there's not a ton to do in Stillwater. I'll be honest. It's not a big extravagant place, so we didn't do much. Kind of a typical Friday or Saturday night for us.
Yeah, it was my wife's birthday Sunday. You know what? Like, I could have took her out to dinner. We could have done this, but I actually made fondue at home, and it was very difficult.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's what I do because I love my wife so much. And
Right.
I mean, I could do the easy thing and go buy dinner. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it myself, and that's exactly what I did. It was quite lovely. So, me and you are on the same page with that. What, Jimmy?
Yeah,
Are you starting trouble with me?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm scarier of Holliday than I am of you.
I don't blame you.
Matt, because we're randomly talking about birthdays here, and you just turned 42. I'm going to be 40 here, coming up in May, and it's the first time I don't want to say I felt like I was old, but when I hit 30, I didn't really care, and I don't feel any different. But I do feel like 40 is something when you hear it, it's different. Did you feel that at all?
40 is the new 30, Charlie.
I know.
I agree with
you gotta phrase it differently. You're only as old as you feel. Some of those things you go with. When you start turning 40, you kind of go, I'm still in the prime of my life. I'm good. 40's the new 30 with medicine and advancement and everything the country knows about anti-aging. That I'm really, really more like 30 than I'm 40. So whatever you have to do to trick yourself that 40 is not that big a deal. It is pretty old, I'll be honest.
59 is the new 30.
Are you 59?
I'm 59.
Oh, my gosh, Jim. No wonder you sound like this.
You sound like you're 58.
So,
Jeez, seriously.
We don't know what's going on with... this is bad.
My God. Sorry, Matty.
Hold on.
Can you write down the question and I'll ask it?
Yeah.
How much does baseball need to get all of spring training in? Because it's too long anyway. Couldn't you whack a few weeks and then still be fine?
Yeah. I think hitters would prefer probably about like a 2 to 3 weeks spring training. I think where it gets tricky is all these pitchers and the kind of building them up to their pitch counts and using the games to do that. I don't really think you have to, but I think that the industry is one that's set in its ways, and so it thinks it needs a certain amount of time, and then you go out and pitch 2 innings, and then you go out and pitch 3 innings, then you go out and pitch 4 innings, and then you go out and maybe pitch 5 innings, and then you might be ready to throw 90 pitches on opening day. So I think it's obviously the length of spring training is for pitchers. And so I think that's where it's tricky, where they'll say, if they're not into camp by March 1st or whatever, that they can't start on time. So hopefully it gets worked out. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff. But I think they could get it ready in 2.5, 3 weeks. But as long as guys are throwing, which nowadays everybody's got their own program, and it's not one of those deals where people come to spring training to get in shape. They're already raring to go when they show up in mid-February.
And Matt, you had the strike back in 94, 95 before you were in the big leagues. But how do you think we got here as a sport and as a former player, but also somebody who cares about the game, for baseball to come back hopefully better than ever? What do you think is a fair way to maybe allow players, if it's hitting free agency earlier, and also make it fair for the owners? Where do you think baseball should land in terms of making it best for both parties?
Well, I think it's gotten here because obviously both sides want more of the pie. I think the players want 50-50. The owners probably want more in the 60-40, 70-30 range as far as salaries compared to the overall pie. And so, obviously as a player, I think it should be closer to 50-50, but, these owners, it's their business, and, they feel a little bit probably strongly that they deserve more than that. I think the whole free agency thing, and now they don't want to pay players past 35, so they're not wanting to go as long and as old into the contracts, which I get. But like you said, if you got to free agency a year earlier, or if you started making money in arbitration after 2 years instead of 3, you start to get paid more in your prime years when you're producing and you're most productive. Your salary is at its highest instead of being a really good player, and then your salaries are kind of the highest when you're headed. You're not quite as good as you used to be. So I think there's some room to work on that. I think one of the big sticking points is the players, is that all these teams aren't as competitive, and they're kind of tanking for the draft, and so there's some concern about how to knock that off and to get teams that are getting revenue sharing to spend some of that revenue sharing on free agency, where a team like Pittsburgh is the highest and biggest contract they ever gave out was Jason Kendall, and he hasn't played in a really long time. So Charlie, I don't know all the ins and outs of what they're fighting over. It's always been a salary cap, so to speak, and free agency, as far as when that happens, and the rest of the DH and all that stuff is very small and easily workable, and the expanded playoff. I don't think anybody is fighting over that stuff. I don't think that either side is against that stuff. So that seems to be some stuff you might read about, but I don't think those are the issues at all. So we'll see. Usually when there's a deadline, when they have to sort of make a deal, and each side starts to sense the fact that they might lose some money, that's usually when it gets done. And so I think as we get closer to the sort of having to move the season back or start late or cancel games, I think that's when usually stuff kind of, they get in a room and they kind of hash it out, and they meet more often, like once every 2 months, which might help. So that would be my opinion on what's going on.
We talked about this a lot with Kyler Murray. I know you were a football player back in the day. I don't know if you considered this, but I feel like when Kyler Murray was drafted by the A's and then also, headed to the NFL, do you think young athletes, if you're a stud quarterback who could also be a pitcher or a baseball player, do you think kids really think about that? Hey, if I become a quarterback, I'm probably making $25 million a year. Yeah, in baseball, I could get that huge contract, but it's not until I'm 28 or 29, and it's only the top 10 or 20 guys in baseball.
Yeah, the percentage of quarterbacks that are getting that kind of money is still super, super small. I would argue that it's smaller than the guys that are making. So I would tell you, football players would tell their kids to play baseball. Our contracts are guaranteed. I think the pounding that they take, the longevity of a career is much more likely in baseball. So I think there are rare occurrences like Kyler Murray where he can go straight to the NFL and make a ton of money and not have to go to the minor leagues. And, you go straight from college to starting and on Sundays pretty much for him. He probably didn't start quite right away. But so I think that there's a very small a group of people that may even consider that. But I would say in general, if you asked NFL players, they would say they'd rather have their kid be playing baseball. Just like I said, for guaranteed contracts and the whole CTE thing, I think scares a lot of people, which, I think it should. I mean, it is scary, and some of these stories of players when they're done playing and some of the, the effects that all the pounding took on their brains, is scary. So, I don't know. I think if you have a chance to go play in the NFL or go to the minor leagues, you might make a different decision. But in general, if you're a kid thinking about whether you want to pursue football or baseball, I think the safer and probably monetarily more advantageous sport would be baseball.
Matt, we obviously know about your time here in St. Louis, but I wanted to ask you what your tenure was like in Colorado coming up, specifically the 2007 year when you guys made it to the World Series for the first time in franchise history. You were the NL batting champion, RBIs leader. I just want to know what it was like coming up with Colorado. It's one of those things. It's all you really know at the beginning. I made some of my great lifetime friends playing in the minor leagues there. Basically, for me, it was like my college experience as far as 18 to 22. You're traveling around and different small towns in the southeast. I spent time in Asheville, North Carolina as my home base, and traveled around that area, and Salem, Virginia, and traveled around that area. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, as far as, you make friends, and a lot of times you move up at the same time. So it's like a college experience as far as, you're riding buses and playing video games and sleeping on the floor in a bus and playing games in small towns in front of no people. So it's a grind. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but at the same time, it kind of weeds out the guys that don't really want it and aren't willing to sacrifice to get it. So I loved it. Ended up, getting my chance in 2004. My first 2 games, I didn't get any hits in St. Louis, and I thought, I'm headed back to the minor leagues anytime now. And so the third game, I got 3 hits and settled in a little bit, and Clint Hurdle told me that to relax, that I was probably going to be there, and they ultimately traded Larry Walker to St. Louis to give me a chance to play every day, and I sort of hit the ground running and had a really good 5 years there, and thought that I would spend my whole career there, but in baseball and free agency and all that stuff, ultimately didn't end up staying there, and got traded to Oakland, and then on to St. Louis, where I absolutely loved it, and ended up spending the biggest bulk of my career and won a championship and played in another World Series, and we were in the playoffs almost every year and made lifetime friends. So it's all worked out. But I did love my time in Colorado. It's a beautiful place. It's a great place to live and play. And I'd be surprised. I think they're going to have a nice run of a franchise that I think will be successful. I think they have some new leadership, and I think players would love to play there if it was a very competitive environment. Obviously, it's not a great place to pitch, but I think if you're going to win, I think it's a good place. I think they can win there.
Matt, growing up in Stillwater, were you a Cowboys fan? Is that Cowboys territory? And are there a lot of sad Cowboy fans walking around your town right now?
I am not a Cowboy guy. It is kind of Cowboy territory. My dad is from Pittsburgh area, so he's a huge Steeler fan. So growing up, I didn't love the Cowboys. I didn't have any reason to. We didn't go down there, and so I grew up more watching Steelers games. But I would say, yes, there's a lot of very sad Cowboy fans. We have a couple of players on our team. One of our coaches is they were following the game last night. We had an evening workout after camp, and they had Poopy Pouty face, and I knew what the score of the game was by the look on their face, and so this is kind of that territory where people are Cowboys fans, but it didn't bother me at all, really. I don't mind watching them, but I wouldn't say I'm a Cowboys fan.
Well, I hope you had a great birthday. I know according to my tracking, the gift I sent you isn't there yet because of the
pandemic
chain. Supply chain delays. But it'll get there this week. We appreciate you making time. We'll see. We'll talk to you next week, and hopefully my voice will be in better shape.
Yeah, we hope so, man.
Actually, it seems like it's come along a little bit in the last 5 minutes. You sound a little more like yourself.
Well, I'm going to finish the last 3 minutes of the show strong. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it.
All right.
See you, big boy.
All right, see you. He's the best.
He's the best.
I want to tell you a little story. Do I have time?
Yeah.
About Matt Holliday.
Does your voice
years
have time?
ago, if my voice holds up, years ago, I just remembered this the other day. So we were out to dinner with some friends, and I think I even brought it up off air here, and was some friends of ours. I forget when, Chesterfield, and a bunch of Cardinals were there, and Matt Holliday picked up the check for our whole table years ago, even before I got to know him. And then one of his sons threw up on the pavement outside the restaurant, and as people were coming in, I let them know that was Matt Holliday's son's throw up.
Did you clean it up?
I did not.
Was it Annie Guns?
I think it was.
Yeah, that's a big tab.
Yeah, right?
That's a big tab. That's a cool thing to do, though.
So he picked up the check, and then I made it a point to let everyone know that that was his son's throw up on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Question. Maybe I need to change my whole approach.
Did you not know he was picking up the check until after the fact?
No, I knew it, and then we were leaving, and then they were a little ahead of us, and then I went to thank him, and I had seen the aftermath of his son doing that.
My point was more so, if you knew before you ordered, you could have gotten a bunch of drinks.
That's what I was going to say.
You add all the mushrooms on the steak.
Would you have known, if you knew he was going to pay for it, would you have gone with the porterhouse or with the nice bottle of wine?
I don't gouge. I would not change my order based on, honestly. I don't do that.
That's why I don't like when people pick my tab up, because if I know they're going to do it, I'm like, look, I eat and drink a lot. You sure you want to do this?
No, but
okie dokie.
You just order what you were normally going to order.
A Bloody Mary and a Stella off the bat. So that's already you're right off the bat. But I don't want to not do my thing.
Right.
Because they're going to pick my tab. What's the point then? I'd rather pay my own and get what the hell I want.
You don't want to gouge.
Beat the pot up, as we call it.
I hear you.
Beat that pot up. I used to do it to the boys all the time. Because some of the older guys are always going to pay for your stuff when you're young. And I'm like, well, I like a lot of things, so it is what it is.
Big Walt, good at that?
Oh, God, is he good at that? And I tell you what, look, good people find a way to pick up tabs for the young kid. You do that, right? But there are some dudes that were cheap. And if you're cheap, you can't shake that in the NHL, man. You can't. Especially if you're not picking a tab up with a bunch of young guys. Pick the damn tab.
You can't, by the way, you can't shake that anywhere, though.
Anywhere. Charlie.
And NHL, obviously a bigger deal, but your cheap friends, on our group text, the cheap friends get chirped 20 years later.
I don't hang out with cheap friends.
And by the way, you have the friend who doesn't understand the concept of tax and tip. Oh, I got $20 worth. Okay, your entree was $20, and then there's also a tip. And
they pull that still with you?
Tax.
They still do that.
This is back in the day, but it's the guy. It's the guy that doesn't understand the concept of
he gets it.
It's not just your entree. Hey, there's a tip. There's tax. You have to throw an extra $5 in.
Hey, Cam, can you get this real quick? Yeah, here's some money, and they give you change. You're like, oh, just keep it, dude. Just keep it.
Which is now with Venmo and all that. See, now you have no excuse.
No excuse at all.
You have no excuse anyway. And then the people that don't tip now, when we have a shortage of workers, really bother me. People that are working now, we should support them 110%.
Okay, I'm going to get destroyed for this. And I'm going to say it anyway. I agree with you 100%. I'm a very generous tipper. Do you also feel though, that now we're being asked to tip for everything?
Yes.
That every time, because back in the day, you tip your waiter or waitress. And I get it, if you get some takeout, okay, you throw a tip because they're making your food. But I feel like now, anywhere you go, they flip the screen on the kiosk to tip at places that you normally wouldn't tip.
Like what?
Almost anywhere. I mean, if you go to the juice bar.
Look to your right.
If you go
Seth put out a tip jar.
Donut shop. My point is,
didn't he?
Most places now, when you pay and you put your credit card up against that machine that's an iPad, a big iPad, they flip the screen and it says tip 10%, good, 15%, very good, 20%, great. And look, I'm always going to tip, but I do feel like now almost every business is asking for a tip. Am I wrong?
I agree with that. But I kind of feel like now, too, like you got to support those
I agree.
folks.
No, I agree.
You got to do it.
I even tip, like the other day, these guys came all at the house. They put this huge thing together in our living room, and I didn't have any cash. And I just felt terrible. I didn't have any cash. I'm like, damn. And they're hockey fans too. Now I felt really cheap. I'm scrounging. I'm calling my wife like, do we have any cash? I could just get it. I didn't have any cash, and I couldn't tip these guys out, and I felt terrible about it. But they drove all the way out there, they put this thing together, and I didn't have any cash for them. I felt god awful.
There are times where you change or whatever you can't tip, and you feel awful about it, right? But sometimes it don't work out.
Yeah, man.
I always try to tip the most, because, like I said, let's support the workforce for people that actually want to do it. Let's support that.
Lot lizards asking for tips. Well, you got to hook them up. They got to get to the next stage of their life.
Built in. That's built into the price.
That's built into the price.
It's the gratuity built in.